It's related to the case study on capital requirement. So we are provided with the different data that is related to authorized capital, paid up capital, statutory reserves, PNCPS, premium and PNCPS, debt capital instruments, general provision and loss reserves, revaluation reserves, and the total risk-weighted assets, that is RWA. And first question is there, that is relation with that we need to calculate the CET1, यानी कि जो हमारे पास कॉमन इक्विटी टियर 1 कैपिटल है उसे हमें यहाँ पर कैलकुलेट करना है. सो काइंडली प्लीज डू आंसर एट द अर्लीस्ट. जल्दी से जल्दी यहाँ पर आंसर आपको पोस्ट करना है. तो एक छोटी सी एक्सरसाइज उससे पहले करने वाला है. मैं यहाँ पर पहले नंबरिंग कर देता हूँ ताकि आपके लिए यहाँ पर आंसर करना आसान हो जाए. सो लेट मी नंबर 8 1 2 3 4 5. ओके, सो जल्दी से जल्दी बता दीजिए कि यहाँ पर सीईटी के कंपोनेंट कौन कौन से हैं. विच ऑफ द फॉलोइंग आर द कंपोनेंट्स ऑफ द कॉमन इक्विटी टियर 1. अगर आपको कंपोनेंट्स नहीं पता है तो आपको प्रीवियस जो हमारा वीडियो था उसको गो थ्रू करना चाहिए, जो आप हमारे जो कोर्सेज हैं IIBF लर्निंग सेंटर ऐप के थ्रू उसे फाइंड आउट कर सकते हैं. एंड वहाँ पर जाकर के आप कंपोनेंट्स के बारे में जान सकते हैं कि हमारे पास AT1 एडिशनल टियर 1 CET1 एंड जो टियर 2 है इनके क्या क्या कंपोनेंट्स रहते हैं उनके बारे में. so that you can answer it correctly over there. तो जल्दी से जल्दी यहाँ पर बताइएगा कि CET1 के कंपोनेंट्स कौन कौन से यहाँ पर रहने वाले हैं. Which of the following would be the components of the CET1 over here? ओके, तो CET1 के बारे में अगर मैं आपसे बात करूँ तो ऑथराइज्ड कैपिटल, डू लेट मी नो कि ऑथराइज्ड कैपिटल जो थी वॉज इट द पार्ट ऑफ द CET1. क्या वो CET1 का पार्ट थी? जल्दी से जल्दी आंसर कीजिएगा. CET1 के कंपोनेंट्स के बारे में बताइएगा कि CET1 के कंपोनेंट्स कौन कौन से थे. So it is related to जो authorized capital है, it was not part of CET1 but paid up capital was. So it is basically मैं यहाँ पर लिख दे रहा हूँ कि कौन कौन से कंपोनेंट थे. तो यहाँ पर लिख दे रहा हूँ कि paid up capital जो है that was the basically component of the CET1. Other than that अगर हम statutory reserves की बात करते हैं तो वो भी यहाँ पर CET1 का कंपोनेंट था. So over here statutory reserves and further it is related to PNCPS. Is it the component of CET1? No, it is not the component of CET1 over here. Okay, so debt capital instruments, general provision reserves, revaluation reserves. So revaluation reserves are also the component of the CET1. Previously they were actually under the tier 2 but now they are under the CET1. Okay, so revaluation reserves are also there but they are calculated at 55% discount. But they are calculated at 55% discount. So what is the paid up capital value? It is 3000. And what it is related to the statutory reserves, it is 2250. And the third one, it is related to revaluation reserves, it is 2500 minus 55%. Okay, so we will be solving it as such and we will be calculating the answer over here. So let's have a look at it. So 2500 it is. So 2500 minus 55%, that is equal to 2500 minus 55%, that is equal to 1125 plus 2250 plus 3000. So the right answer over here related to CET1 capital. तो CET1 का जो हमारे पास आंसर है यहाँ पर आया है that is 6375. That is answer related to the CET1 over here. It is 6375. So Rahul ji ne and Karunal Sukhdev both have answered correctly over here at the earliest. So CET1 का जो यहाँ पर आंसर है that is 6375 over here. Is it right? तो यहाँ पर मैं लिख देता हूँ कि ऑथराइज्ड कैपिटल तो किसी में भी मैं डिफाइन नहीं करता हूँ. जो पेड अप कैपिटल है वो किसका कंपोनेंट है? दैट इज कंपोनेंट ऑफ CET1 का कंपोनेंट है. स्टैच्यूटरी रिजर्व जो है वो किन का कंपोनेंट है? स्टैच्यूटरी रिजर्व्स आर आल्सो पार्ट ऑफ द CET1, वो भी CET1 का कंपोनेंट है. PNCPS जो है वो एडिशनल टियर 1 का कंपोनेंट है. आल्सो जो उनका शेयर प्रीमियम है वो भी एडिशनल टियर 1 का कंपोनेंट है. जो डेप्ट कैपिटल इंस्ट्रूमेंट है जो क्वालिफाई करे टियर 2 के लिए वो तो टियर 2 का पार्ट रहेंगे. जनरल प्रोविजंस एंड रिजर्व्स भी टियर 2 का पार्ट है. एंड जो रिवोल्यूशन रिजर्व्स हैं वो भी यहाँ पर CET1 का ही कंपोनेंट है. ओके, ये चीज़ क्लियर होगी है. नाउ लेट्स मूव फर्दर, अगले क्वेश्चन पर चलते हैं. ओके, so it says calculate CET1 capital ratio. We need to calculate the CET1 capital ratio over here. Second question over here, it says we need to calculate the CET1 capital ratio. Now whensoever we need to calculate the CET1 capital ratio, what is the formula related to it? It is simply the capital that you are maintaining divided by the total risk-weighted assets. Okay, so over here the capital we are maintaining, it is 6375 is basically the capital under the CET1 divided by total risk-weighted asset that is equal to 90,000 into 100%. That would be the answer over here. That would be simply the answer over here. So what would be the right answer? What would be the answer? It will be 6375 divided by 90,000 and percent. That is 7.08%. So let me write the percentage also over here. It is 7.08%. It is 7.08% for the CET1. Okay, that was related to question number 2. So if you are aware of what would be the different components of the capital, definitely you can solve the question very easily over here. And now let's move to the next question. It says we need to calculate the AT1, that is the additional tier 1 capital is to be calculated. Next question जो है यहाँ पर that it is related to we need to calculate the additional tier 1 capital. Additional tier 1, we need to calculate the additional tier 1. तो यहाँ पर क्या आंसर रहने वाला है additional tier 1 के केस में? What would be the answer? If we just look at the different components, over here, okay, so PNCPS is amounting PNCPS plus प्रीमियम इन PNCPS, जो भी प्रीमियम है हमारे पास PNCPS का, that is also under the AT1. okay, PNCPS is what? PNCPS is perpetual non-cumulative preference shares. okay, so PNCPS amount over here it is 2000 plus premium in PNCPS it is 200, but the maximum amount of the additional tier 1, there is a restriction basically related to it, that the maximum amount of the additional tier 1, it is to be restricted to be 1.5% of the total risk weighted asset. So it is 90,000. So 90,000 into 1.5%, what it would be? So 90,000 into 1.5%, it is actually equal to 90,000 into 1.5%, that is 1350. Out of 2200, only 1350 is accountable for the AT1. I'm just mentioning it over here. That is for AT1, the accountable amount is 1350, and the rest of the part would be accounted as surplus and would be accountable under the tier 2 capital. So it is 2200 minus 1350 minus 1350, that is equal to 850. That is a surplus component over here. That is a surplus component. I just told you that over the PDI and PNCPS share premium, if there is any surplus, that will basically account for tier 2 component. Is that clear? So for AT1 over here, it is what? It is 1350. It is 1350 against 2200. Okay, so 850 would be the surplus. So Rahul Singh Rajput has answered correctly over here at the earliest. Okay. Now let's move to the next question. I hope that you must have understood the concept related to it. Now let's move to the next question. It says we need to calculate the AT1 ratio, that is additional tier 1 ratio. Now it's quite easier so as to calculate the AT1 ratio. Simply it would be 1350 divided by 90,000. We already basically restricted it to 1.5%. So either way the answer is 1.5%. Either way the answer is 1.5% over here. Now let's move to the next question. It says that we need to calculate the tier 2 capital. It says that we need to calculate the tier 2 capital over here. So what would be the answer over here? So what would be the answer related to the tier 2 capital over here? So what it would be related to the tier 2 capital? So the different components of tier 2 capital over here, which are given as, first of all, it is a DCI, that is a debt capital instrument. It is given to be 800, but it says that the residual maturity is of 3 years and 6 months. Residual maturity is 3 years and 6 months. Okay. Now that is to be considered. Further, the second component, it is the general provisions and reserves. It is general provisions and reserves. Now one thing that you need to understand first of all, that the surplus part which was over here, that will also form the part of the tier 2 capital. So it will be the surplus which will be accountable for the tier 2 itself. And the another thing that is under the debt capital instrument, if the residual maturity is greater than 5 years, in that case 100% of the value is to be considered. And if it is above than 4 years but lesser than 5 years or up to 5 years, in that case it is 80% of the value is to be considered. If it is above 3 years, in that case 60% of the value is to be considered. If it is above 2 years, then 40%, above 1 year, then 20%. Okay, so this is the way related to that how we account for the different values. That how we account for the different values which are to be considered. So this is a discount factor which is to be considered. If we say that the residual maturity over here is 3 years and 6 months, what does it indicate? क्या इंडिकेट कर रहा है इस चीज को यहाँ पर? इट इंडिकेट कि जो मेरे पास रेजिडुअल मेच्योरिटी है वो 3 साल से ज्यादा है लेकिन 4 साल से कम है, विच विंडो इट विल बी द विंडो ओवर हियर, दैट इज 3 साल से ज्यादा है लेकिन 4 साल से कम है. So 60% value is to be considered. So 800 into 60%, that only value is to be considered. Okay, and then it is a general provision and reserves. The amount is given to be 1600. 1600 plus surplus is given to be what? Surplus is basically not given. We calculated it to be 850. हमने 850 कैलकुलेट किया था. अब यहाँ पर देखिए जनरल प्रोविजन एंड रिजर्व के केस में देखिएगा, यहाँ पर एक रिस्ट्रिक्शन थी कि जनरल प्रोविजन एंड रिजर्व का अमाउंट है ना, that is basically restricted to 1.25%, not 1.5. It is basically restricted to 1.25% of the total risk-weighted assets. Now what is the amount of the total risk-weighted assets? It is 90,000. So 1.25% of 90,000. So 90,000 into 1.25%. That is basically 1125. So this will not be considered because only it is restricted to 1125. That is 1.25% of the total risk-weighted assets over here. So it is basically 800 into 60%. First of all, 800 into 60%, that is equal to 480 plus 1125. So 480 plus 1125 plus 850. So that is the value that is basically accountable for. And over here Rahul Singh Rajput has answered correctly. So it will be 480. Let me just mention it for you for clarity purpose. So 480 plus 1125 plus 850, that is equal to 2455. Now what are the different constraints for tier 2 capital? What are the different constraints for tier 2 capital? First constraint, it is related to that tier 2 capital can be maximum of 100% of the tier 1 capital. What was the amount of tier 1 capital? It is 6375 plus 1350. So definitely it is not more than 100% or basically of the tier 1 capital. So that's basically the first constraint, because the first constraint of related to tier 2 capital, it says that the tier 2 capital is maximum be equal to tier 1 capital, not more than that. Another constraint related to tier 2 capital is basically related to that the tier 2 capital cannot be greater than or equal, cannot be greater than 50% of the total capital, or 50% of the total capital, so maintain. Okay, so that is also true over here. Okay, so it will be basically 2455 is our tier 2 capital. Let me just mention it over here. So over here the tier 2 capital that we just calculated, it is 2455. It is 2455. Okay, आई होप कि ये पॉइंट यहाँ पर क्लियर हो गए होंगे. आई होप कि ये पॉइंट्स यहाँ पर क्लियर हो गए होंगे आपको. ओके, तो अभी नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन पर चलते हैं. इट सेज कैलकुलेट द टोटल कैपिटल रिक्वायर्ड. टोटल कैपिटल कितनी रिक्वायर्ड थी उसके बारे में हमें बताना है कि टोटल कैपिटल कितनी रिक्वायर्ड थी उसके बारे में बताना है. व्हाट इज द टोटल कैपिटल? इट इज बेसिकली टीयर 1 प्लस टीयर 2. तो टीयर 1 में दो कंपोनेंट है. कौन कौन से कंपोनेंट है? वन इट इज द CET1, अदर वन इट इज द एडिशनल टीयर 1, एंड देन इट इज रिलेटेड टू द टीयर 2 कैपिटल. So CET1 we calculated to be 6375 plus additional tier 1 we calculated to be 1350 plus tier 2 we calculated to be 2455. So what would be the answer over here? What is the total capital so maintained over here? It is 2455 plus 1350, 2455 plus 1350 plus 6375, that is equal to 10180. So the total capital so maintained. So the total capital so maintained over here is 10180. That is the total capital maintained. So that is the amount of the total capital so maintained. Okay. Is it clear? Now let's move to the next question. It says calculate the CAR or CRAR. That we need to calculate the capital adequacy ratio, and or we can say capital risk weighted asset ratio. So we need to calculate the amount of CAR or CRAR. What it would be? CR is actually what? The total amount of capital that we are calculating over, we're maintaining over here. That is equal to 10180 divided by the total risk-weighted assets. That is equal to 90,000. That is basically the CAR or CRAR. That is 10180 divided by 90,000 into 100%, that is equal to what? 11.31%. So 11.31%, that is a CAR or CRAR in this particular case. Is it clear? ये चीज क्लियर हो गया यहाँ पे? Okay. Now let's have a look at if there is any other question. So that would be all related to this particular case study. I hope that you must have understood this particular case study. That was all related to this particular case study over here.